That's why I'm for the legalization of marijuana. Because just because I don't want to smoke it, I don't drink either. I just don't think any of it, it's not for me. But this is how you're filling up prisons. And as long as you can keep dinging the government monthly for all those cheese sandwiches and all the toilet water, full prisons are how people make money. It's like being a guy with a hotel. You make money when you have butts and beds. If people stop going to Disney World and the hotel's empty, the hotels have worry. If you build supermax prisons, and if you're the state who paid for them and no one's in them, you have worry. And so what do? How do you make crime happen? How do you turn people into criminals? Well, statistically, crime is down in America. Homicide is down in big cities, which is nice. We're becoming more civilized. So if you can't get them to murder each other, you have to make the path to prison easier, wider, easier access, and a more slippery slope. And so that's why kids are getting arrested in high school for being late. They're just making the gateway to prison just a wider mouth. And it's easier to fall in. As soon as you get that butt in the bed in prison, that becomes between $50,000 to $150,000 a year for the prison industrial complex. And once that person is incarcerated, they lose the right to vote. You know, it's as Michelle Alexander, the great writer, called it, it's the new Jim Crow. And her book, The New Jim Crow, is a great read. It's one of the best things I've read in the last 10 years. And so that's where we're at. And basically, millions and millions and millions of good Americans are being gamed. And if you come from the street, if you understand the street and the hustle, it's about as crass as a guy flashing you. It is what it is. It's a hustle. You're being gamed. And I don't understand why so many people show up to get gamed. You know, there's a guy I know, his name is Ice-T, the rapper guy. And he's a tremendous intellect. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And for over 20 years or so, he and I have been very good pals. And when we converse, when we get together, this is what we talk about. We just talk about the game and how it gets played on millions of Americans. And they vote for people who screw them, basically. They basically are imprisoned. They protect their captors and shoot at the liberators. That's how I term it. And that's where we are. And you can decide really how you want to play out your American life and how you want to be with the people you fill this continent with. The country is changing, and that's often turbulent and interesting and wild. But meanwhile, the money is steadily going up and congealing. And so it's like blood, it just congeals, it pools at the top, fighting gravity. Instead of going down and out, it goes up and freezes. And so you have more people, more interaction, the chance for innovation, the chance for positive forward movement. People wanting to invent stuff like electric cars and solar panels and this and that. And the young people with amazing minds want to take this America and go forward and turn this century into a really fascinating time to be alive. Yet, the bigger money that gets bigger all the time is into older investments. Dinosaur oil, dinosaur bones that are now, it's your oil. And they're into older hatred. They're into Cold War mentalities and demonizing the Middle East or anywhere else that has oil under its sandals. And so this is the friction, where you have a lot of people who want marriage equality, yet some man with a thundering voice preaching stentorian from the mount tells you that it's a sin for Bill and Tom to shack up in a condo, and I don't really see any harm in these two people getting together in their short life to have some joy. However, there are some people who will tell you it's why we have hurricanes. And these are people who make millions of dollars, and good people respect and believe these people. And so that's what you have. You have a rapidly changing country in a world with rapidly diminishing renewable energy sources and rapidly diminishing supplies of water, breathable air. And the world is going to get really mean for a while. Like I'm not Nostradamus, but I spend a lot of time in Africa. And there's going to be parts of Africa that are going to go away, and that there will be peoples of Africa, like maybe like the Mundari in South Sudan. The Mundari, nomadic cattle people, they're going to run out of water for all those big creatures, and the cows eventually die. And those people either move or they die. Because the birds, they got wings, they're out. Even the bugs will eventually move. And so the world is going to be very harsh for some people geographically, and going to be very mean towards those who don't have enough money. I would like to avoid that as much as possible. And so I take it upon myself to do whatever I can to not be part of it. And unfortunately, in a corporatized world, no matter how PC you try to be, you're going to get a little on you. You're going to be somehow, you're going to have at least a finger in the machine aiding, maybe your own destruction. Whenever I'm in Johannesburg, and I might, again, be very naive, but whenever I'm there, it's like every other year for me, for shows, I swear it's getting better. I really think Johannesburg, whenever I'm in Cape Town, it just seems to, as a journalist once said to me there, we are emerging from the hangover of apartheid. And I think they are. Because when I meet a lot of young people there. I'm like, so what do you think about apartheid? They're like, I was never into it. My parents were never into it. I have a weird uncle out in the sticks. And it's his thing. Which reminds me of like some people out in the sticks of Australia that I've encountered. People in the sticks of America, where they're not getting enough electricity or not enough oxygen. Something's in their water. Or they got their perch, and they will not be knocked off it because they think, well, this is what I got, this is who I am. They identify with, unhappily, their ignorance. But this is generational. So I think with more elections and more time, maybe things change. England being an island, with so much coastline, there's so much opportunity for things to come in. It is the mushroom in the salad that absorbs flavor from the dressing and all the other vegetables thrown in. And you have an African influence. You have a Caribbean influence. People came from other places. You have some of the best Indian food you'll have outside of India is in England. You have so much flavor coming in. If you go to Brixton, you'll hear the dub booming out of houses. And so for a young musician, there is a lot to soak up by just being a British person. You can go to the record store, and these record stores are really eclectic. And you'll see some old guy behind the counter, and he's got his old ska records going. Like, all right. And so to be British, you are privy to the world is coming to your country to play for you. And it's why Johnny Rotten, he grew up with dub. That's why the second Public Image record has so much dub in it, because that was his music growing up. And so I think England benefited from being the receptacle for so much great music and the best of it. Like if you see interviews with Keith Richards, he's not talking about, oh, England, we're so great. He's like, man, I love Buddy Holly. I love Little Richard. I love Chuck Berry. They were geeked on American rock and roll. And ask Paul McCartney. He was a Buddy Holly guy. The Beatles were fascinated by Buddy Holly and American rock and roll. Look how many times the Beatles covered Chuck Berry. Like a lot, if you listen to their BBC recordings, the bootleg edition especially, they loved them some Chuck Berry. And they loved the blues. They loved Ike and Tina. And they loved the Ikeettes. And guys like Joe Cocker really let the American backup chicks just let it rip on their records. And I'm not trying to say that England gets it all from elsewhere, because certainly you have some of the finest guitar players in our lifetime are British. But I think they are geographically placed in history. As brutal as it has been, and England is responsible for a lot of brutality in the world. Well, it's not you, it's not me, but it happened. But because of what came before, you have a lot of fascinating and beautiful culture that has come into a very small geographic space. And so not only is it next to each other, but it's so close to each other, one guy throws one handful of his stuff into the bouillabaisse and another guy throws his in, and it gets stirred just because the underground trains keep moving. And and the clubs are playing this and that. And some smart DJ goes, oh, and he invents, he hybridizes something cool. And it becomes a genre maybe. And so, rhythm and blues, there you go. And I think that's why England, to this day, is still helping to define new music, and is still a great place to go and learn about music you haven't heard yet. I think England, they will get behind a guy like John Peel. They will let John Peel, sadly, is gone. They'll let John Peel have a show and just let him do what he wanted. And because of John Peel, guys like me who had like these poorly dubbed cassettes of Peel sessions in England, which have thankfully all been released, everything from Nico to Thin Lizzy to The Damned did Peel sessions, allowing a guy like me to hear this music that literally changed my life. And in America, a guy like John Peel, he gets a few seasons on NPR and then he gets moved out of the way. Where in England, John Peel, for many of us, was a damn god. And he really allowed a lot of, when he would get behind a band like The Fall or The Ruts, he would go like, I like this single by The Ruts, In a Rut, their first ever A-side. He would play that thing, brought him in for a Peel session. He helped break The Ruts. The Fall apparently were his favorite band. Yeah. There's a 6 CD box set of just The Fall's Peel sessions, which is my Desert Island box set. And so and the BBC, which really cares about culture, they're like Francis Okura, where they're like, that's a band from wherever, put a mic in front of it, vault it, we'll always have it. And the music festivals in England, like Reading and Leeds, they are wildly eclectic. And they allow a band like Tinariwen from Mali to like be in front of thousands of people. And thankfully you have the equivalent here, like Coachella, where I saw Tinariwen. I usually go to Africa to see them. But now I can see them conveniently in America because American festivals are getting sharp. But I saw more of that in England before I saw it anywhere else, except for maybe Holland or Germany, where they have these wonderful international festivals where everyone comes in. I've played Pukkelpop and Pandora, all of them many times. But Europe and England were very sympathetic to the plight of the blues man and the jazz player back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, where Charlie Parker's getting called some horrible name. Here in Sweden or in England, he's being treated like the genius he was. And so there are different countries and different continents have different allowances and considerations of culture, and you see how after centuries it meets itself out upon the people, how they vote, the wars they fight, the wars they very consciously stay out of. And then there's us who gave the world bebop, jazz. It's maybe America's greatest contribution to the world. It was Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Sun Ra. But then there's other stuff that's not nearly as cool. I have failed, I think, many times, not exactly in career choices, just where I didn't do as much. I did the thing, I was in a movie, I did a record. Looking back at it, I'm like, could have been better. And it's a drag to be like a Monday morning quarterback. Well, that sucked. Well, I was in the moment, man. I was doing what I thought was right at the time. And I always do. I do the best I can. But now I see as an older guy, where it's like too late to run back and redo it, that perhaps some more patience and some more preparation would have been better for some pursuits. But I don't think I've failed massively. Like, damn, I really regret all my years as a neo-Nazi. I don't have anything like that going. I just fear a lack of diligence, a lack of respect for what I'm doing, what I've taken on, what I said yes to. And I work under a lot of different contracts. Like I am doing a television show right now for the History Channel. I'm obligated to make a great TV show, which I think we're going to do. But I must do everything in my power not to screw that up. Diet, sleep, whatever it takes to deliver the maximum potential that I can bring to the table, I have to do that. 99%, it's that 1%, which to me is the failure, where I didn't just kind of kill myself trying to hit it out of the park for the coach. And so I fear that. I fear ever taking it easy, and I fear being too comfortable. Yeah. And I seek to survive money, and I seek to survive comfort. Because when I was young and broke, I worked really hard. Now I'm old and not broke. And money can make your life very comfortable, where you don't have to move a lot. You could just kind of go, nah, I don't want to, and still pay your bills. I can't live that way. I don't want to. I still want to feel under pressure, like I have to make it. So I want to live my life as a freshman, the guy in the copy room trying to get uptown, like up 4 floors in the building. I never want to lose that dung beetle with my ball, trying to push it up the hill, because that's where I do my best work. Yeah, well, it just depends on how you're wired, what you see as your objective, and who you are. Some people can slack off for entire fiscal quarters. I mean, like a year of their life goes by, they go, what happened? That bugs me after about 40 minutes. I'm like, oh no, I'm not achieving. And so here's how, what I've figured out in the last few years. If you live in the present and you strive towards the future, you're not old. I'm 53. That is really irrelevant to me, besides making funny jokes about my gray hair. Beyond that, I'm right now. Was it Friday? I'm Friday. I'm April 2014. That's what I am. I'm right now looking to get to the next thing and occupy that moment. And if I'm going to be in that, I'm going to be going and going and going. And then one day you die. And you're like, and it's done. There's not like, oh, I'm afraid of death. I'm too busy to fear that. I'm too busy to look behind me and go like, man, life was better when I was 22 in my Morrison phase. I got right now. That's all I have. And to occupy that moment fully, all you have is excitement and potential. So there's no reason not to get up as early as possible and start doing whatever it is. And if you run out of things to do, like, damn, man, let's invent something to do, because nothing is not for me. And so that's how I'm living now. And it keeps me perpetually excited and running at it. I found my lethargic years where I think those were my late teens, early 20s, where like, oh, the world has put itself upon me. I'm so world weary. I didn't know a damn thing about being tired. And now that when I get up and my knees make an audible sound and my back hurts, I know all about being tired. But still, I'm like, no. Right into it I go. It doesn't interest me, in that I tried it out of boredom. I was at band practice with one of my bandmates in Trenton, New Jersey in May of 1987. And my rhythm section bandmates were, they had a large joint. And I love the smell of marijuana. It smells great. It's like the smell of coffee. It kind of smells a little better than it tastes. Anyway, I said, let me have some of that. And they were like, oh, yeah, right. You're kidding. I went, no. And they're like, oh, go ahead. We want to watch this. So as I do everything, I kind of gave it my best shot. Like okay, like this, right? like Jacques Cousteau. I'm like, I just hold. And they're like, no, you need to breathe. I'm like, okay. And after like 4 minutes or so, I exhaled and immediately it was not subtle, the effects. It wasn't like, what am I supposed to feel? I was like, am I sitting? And someone said, here, have a glass of water. I said, oh, thank you. And I just held the glass of water, unable to navigate it to my face. And more alarmingly, I couldn't get it back to the table. I said, how do I do this? And they're beet red laughing because they smoke weed every day and they could walk on a tightrope. You can't even tell they're high. And me, I was like, day one. I'm like, and I think someone reached over and said, you just do that. I was like, oh. And I said, so how do you feel? And I think I went into some tangent about space or something. And I got a few sentences into that and said, what was I talking about? Pot 101, freshman, kaboom, everyone's laughing again. And so I just sat there for about 20 minutes saying, so when is this over? And they said, yeah, you got like another 20 to 30 minutes. I'm like, okay. And I just kind of waited it out. And I said, you guys pay to feel like this? And they're like, yeah. I said, nah. It wasn't like I was freaking out, forgetting how to breathe, looking for a window to jump out of. I just didn't enjoy it. And it's the same effect I had when I tried alcohol. I'm like, depressing, and I just don't like, it must be a body chemistry thing, where it's just not for me. And so I've never had a thing against marijuana, in that if alcohol is legal, And I think alcohol is really bad for you. I'm not against it. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to be on the road when that guy's on it. And I don't want to be in the way of that guy's fist when he's running at me because he's had too much of it. And I'd hate to be his wife when he gets home. And so if that's legal, and tobacco, which I think is it's just poison in a pack, and it doesn't matter what you put on the cover, this is going to kill you now. If people still want it, I'm not getting in the way. I just don't want it in my lungs. And so if you have these two celebrated chemicals or intoxicants and people are demonizing marijuana, are you kidding? That's racism. That's because it's a black man's drug, it's a brown guy's drug, it's a Latino guy's drug, it's for those jazz guys, it's for your crappy nephew in his college dorm room with his Che Guevara poster who's not getting anything done and emboldening our enemies and making the Western world collapse, which is all just a load. And since every president since at least Carter's probably gotten high, and whether I voted for them or not, their achievements and failures I don't think were marijuana induced either way. And so the criminalization and the illegality of marijuana, I can't logic out in my head. Besides, you like to throw brown people and poor people in jail. You like to be able to say that you're bad and I'm good, and I'm vomiting, falling over myself, but somehow I'm innately better to the mellow stoned guy in Central Park. I'm me, the Archie Bunker angry drunk guy. Or, you know, that whole beer culture and alcohol culture in advertising at the Super Bowl, you know, Coors Light. Okay, like 5 of those. Drink responsibly. What about smoke marijuana responsibly? Yeah. Well, if you give people marijuana, they're going to go out there. Look, go out there and what? Order pizza, have interesting conversations, sit on a couch, more or less than they do with alcohol, which are fair. If you look at billboards, you're fairly pulling me over and slamming it down my throat because I like women. You're putting a lot of women in that ad. So if I drink the booze, I get them. I bet I don't. I bet I'm, as Jello Biafra and the Dead Kennedys had a song all about that, and he's right. And so I can't logic out why anyone would want to make marijuana illegal unless they sell prison beds, or they just hate minorities or those who they find objectionable. And that's why, as a guy who has no interest whatsoever in smoking marijuana, I am a very loud advocate for its legalization and a retroactive decriminalization of marijuana, where all these people in jail for an ass pocket of weed, this is preposterous. It's a thing that grows out of the ground in almost any climate. And if you look at the history of hemp in America, America has a great history with hemp. It's hard to process. Jefferson's slaves said, hey, Thomas, I'm sure that's what they called him. Thomas, this stuff hurts our hands to process. And he said, okay, let's stop. But Washington grew hemp. Jefferson grew hemp. For a minute there in colonial era America, you had to grow hemp. As a homeowner, you had to grow a little for all the new sails and ropes and things they were building with it. And so that's kind of my take on marijuana in a nutshell. I don't want to smoke it. But in my 53 years of living, no one's made me smoke it. And so far, I've gotten along on planet Earth with an abundance of weed everywhere, and I feel quite safe with all of that. So that's where I'm at with all of that. Questions relating to love and intimacy, I find very difficult to approach. And so someone goes, have you ever been in love? I'm like, maybe, I'm sure, I don't know. I have no idea. Because all of that is so mystical or at least mystifying to me, or illogical. I feel very Vulcan on all of that, where I'm like, well, it seems to be something that people do. And I just have never really understood it. I have had a very strange relationship with humans. I really miss them when they're dead and don't pay much attention to them when they're alive, unless they're young. And then I'm like Uncle Henry, I like to play with him. But when they become adults, I just don't understand them anymore. As my assistant tells me, you're just avoiding your life. I'm like, yeah, she says I'm the biggest coward. When I do these epic 11-month tours where I just travel by myself across 15 countries, she'll go, you're avoiding real life. I go, really? I just hiked through Bangladesh. I think I'm really taking life in the teeth. I just was in Pyongyang. I think I'm doing real life, like on growth hormone. She's like, no, if you were real, you'd get a girlfriend and settle down. And I just feel like the hands around my throat. It's just not for me. And I certainly like women and all of that, but that domestic, that stasis, I fear it. And I'm sure you can find all the damn turbulence you want in a real relationship. It's just not the kind I'm after.